All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode today. This is a question and answer based podcast. If you have a question about OCD or anxiety stuff, you can message me over at fearcastpodcast.com. You can send me an audio question over there, which again goes to the tippity top of the list for what's going to be recorded next. You can also do that over at Instagram. I am Fearcast Podcast over at Instagram, so you can check me out over there. Send me a DM, press the little microphone button in the text bar and record your message there. You can also send me a regular old questionnaire. That's also fine. But you can send in your question. I will read it, listen to it, consider it, and likely put it up in a future episode, as I am doing today. Today's question comes from Marianne. This was a relatively recent question that was sent in, and kind of because it mixes things up, right? We're going to be talking a little bit about some academic fears, a little bit of real event OCD, maybe. Maybe that's a teaser. I don't know. It's confusing, and you'll find out why. But thank you all for coming back to listen to the podcast. If this is your first time, welcome. I hope it's not too weird. I mean, the goal of this whole podcast, I started this, probably, man, it is getting on towards 8 years. And I know that because it was published right around, the first episode came around right around the time of my daughter's birth. Homegirl's about to turn 8, which is crazy. Dude, it turns out if you just keep feeding these little monsters and, being nice to them and trying to keep them from, killing themselves and everybody else, they just keep getting older for the most part. I know some don't, but, mine has, which is cool. So, that's how I measure things, is by, how old she is to how old this is. So anyways, I'm sure there are other measurements of age that I have, but that's the one I have for the podcast. But either way, it's been going on this long. And again, the only reason why it runs is because y'all keep sending in questions. Yeah, I've got an interview question or interviewee an interviewee here and there. But I mean, that's what the OCD Stories is about, right? That's what other podcasts are about. This is a question and answer based show. That's why it's here. That's why I started it. And thank you all for sending it in and being so vulnerable and being so caring to send it in. Because again, if you have this fear, someone in the world does also. So send it in. Hopefully it's going to help you, and hopefully it's going to help out somebody else in the world. So we're going to keep doing this until I stop getting questions or I'm dead, and we'll see which one happens first. So, oh man. So I don't know about y'all, but I'm gearing up for the IOCDF conference. It's coming up soon, like real soon. Like I know that, I'm recording this on Thursday, June 18th. Like it's like a couple of weeks away. I'm flying on like a Thursday or something like that. I'm going to get to like Wednesday night and be like, I need to pack. And it's going to catch me by surprise. I know it will. And if I see you there, awesome. Say hi. If you want to ignore me and just, ignore me and just contribute. I don't know if it would contribute to my social anxiety or not to have everybody ignore me or have everybody pay attention to me. I don't like either one. I think I prefer being ignored. That sounds much better. So much better. But we'll see how it all goes. It's going to be fun. There are going to be people there, and I'm going to learn stuff, and I'm going to touch base with people that I love connecting with at the conference, and it's going to be great. But hopefully you all are there. Hopefully you can catch some information that's going to be live streamed or just other stuff or other information that's going to come from it. So, so much good, so much weird. All right. I think that's what I got for you at the tippity top of this. And you know what? I had a really weird experience recently. So, as y'all know, I have back problems. So I finally, after probably years of requesting one, finally got an MRI. Now, I don't know if you've ever had an MRI. Now, I've had x-rays before. I've had a billion x-rays. I've had CAT scans before, and those are fine. But I've never had an MRI before. I've always been worried about them because I have staples in my lungs from my previous lung surgery where they took a part out and they stapled me closed. I guess that was par for the course back then. But I was always told, like, well, if you have metal in your body and you do an MRI, it's going to like rip that metal out of your body. And like, I just got this vision of like getting inside one of these machines and having the magnet go, and like the little staples just going zip, zip, and like being ripped out of my body and through my rib cage. And like it's a bad image is what I'm trying to tell you. So I've always had that fear in my head. They assured me after some checking that the staples were titanium or are titanium, so they wouldn't react. And I went, okay, I hope you're right. We'll see. So I got on the machine. They put you in, and I did not realize how small that little tube is. I'm not really a claustrophobic sort of fella, but I'll tell you, it was uncomfortable. It was really tight, and I could kind of feel, this is how I envisioned it. It was as if, like, I could feel fear and discomfort and panic, like far away, but I felt it there. And I felt like if I continued to go down the path that I was going, they were just kind of marching slowly towards me. So I will be honest, for my first one, here's what I did. Because the visual of having that thing so close to me was so overwhelming, I closed my eyes. Now, that might be cheating, but it was one of the things that helped get me through it. Now, if I had continued to think about how close the machine was and how far into it I was, because it would be hard to like wiggle my way out of it. I could feel that feeling kind of, again, plodding towards me. I focused on the sounds it made because it's loud. They actually give you earplugs for it. So I focused on the sounds, and I noticed that there was some weird clicking and noises and hums and stuff like that. And then at some point it started doing this very rhythmic thing, and it did 2 sets of 4, and then a break, and then 2 sets of 4 and a 1. So from a music perspective, it'd be like 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4, and then it went 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 1, right? And then it did that over and over and over again. And then at some point it changed, and then that repeating pattern came back. I don't know what it did. But trying to focus on something else that wasn't the idea of I was being enclosed by death, I think it really helped me get through that, because it was really uncomfortable, I'm telling you. And I talked to my brother about it, and I hope he's okay. I hope he's okay. He doesn't listen to this podcast, and that's okay. He said he had an MRI once, and he had a panic attack and didn't go back. And he, like me, like every other FOSS man, has a terrible lower back. So we all are screwed. And I'm probably going to get surgery for it. So yay, surgeries again. More metal in my body. So that's coming. That's coming. I'll keep you all up to date, but hopefully it doesn't come. All right, enough yammering. Let's get on to Marianne's question. So this question, as I mentioned, comes from Marianne. Now, is that her real name? Who knows? Who knows? Maybe yes, maybe no. It just speaks to the anonymity. Y'all don't know Marianne. It could be her name. It could be Jeff. We don't know. But Marianne is the name that they gave me, so guess what? That's their name. So if you are concerned about the name and whether or not people are going to know it's you, give me whatever name you want. Whatever name you want. Marianne's today. All right. Marianne says, suffering from OCD purely around academic events. They go on to say, hello, Kevin. Massive fan of your work in the podcast. Thank you. I am in my early 20s and from the UK. And last year, I completed my degree with a first class. I don't know what that means. As an American, it sounds good. It sounds very good. But is it one of those like public school, private school sort of things where it's kind of flippity-florped and like first class is bad? I don't know. Either way, it sounds good. So congratulations, Marianne. All right, so I completed with first class. It should be a really proud moment for me. But since I got my results, life has been a struggle. I am plagued by thoughts from real events that happened during school, college, and university. I was never a smart kid. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I was never a smart kid, but always did okay in school. When the pandemic hit, I felt lost. All of my friends were in college and doing well with their goals for their futures, and I felt like I had missed out. Jump forward to late 2020, and I finally got a place on a college course I loved. I was a good student, no cheating, no plagiarism, and always handed my work in on time. cut forward a year later to early 2022, and I was at risk of failing a compulsory course. I did fail it, but so did everybody else. The teacher gave us another chance, and I ended up completing it. I then went to university and loved it. It was so difficult, but worth it. I learned a lot. I grew as a person and succeeded. Since graduating, I can't stop recounting events, checking old work, calculating grades, checking old emails, and needing to feel like I earned it fairly and did everything in line. I am stuck in a hard place between, quote, technically this was/wasn't allowed, and, quote, well, you made a mistake, let yourself off the hook. I cannot seem to feel fine with the uncertainty around it all, when deep down, I know I did everything as best I could. I'm doing fine these days, but I still get caught out. They say ERP or accept and move on. Massive thanks. So, Marianne, thank you so much for this question. So, obviously, the answer is accept and move on. Good luck. No, that's not where it ends. Okay, it's going to be more. There's going to be more, I promise. Okay. The obvious answer is yes, accept and move on. But there are a lot of other things you can do, and I have obviously a lot of other things to question about. But obviously, accepting and moving on is easier said than done. If you could have done it, you would have done it already, right? This feels like it's one of those, like, just stop panicking, like I could have said to myself. But, again, easier said than done. The question is, like, what are we going to do to move? What are we going to do to do those two parts? What do we do to accept? What does that actually mean to accept the situation? And then what does it mean to actually move on, right? I think what we mean when we say move on is we mean, like, don't feel bad anymore, or don't think about it sometimes, right? Just get over it, right? I think get over it kind of means the same thing. So it's this complicated mess on what we do with it. And I'll say, I don't know if you'll be able to fully accept and move on. And I don't know. You might be able to fully accept and move on, but I do know that forgive and forget doesn't quite work. I'll get into forgiveness here in a little bit. But this may be one of those things that because you've had this big emotional time with this, and you've had this compulsive process with it, that it may be one of those things that you get reminded of from time to time. Okay, so let me get further into this and further into some of my thoughts. So number one, I'm hearing two sides to this, and this is where my confusion comes in, okay? So on the one hand, you said, I didn't do any cheating, no plagiarism, everything was turned in on time, all that stuff. Awesome. But then you said, the rumination was, technically this was allowed or technically this wasn't allowed, and then the statement of, well, you made a mistake. I don't know which one it is, because there are two different tracks, I think, to dealing with this and approaching this. Now, they're not vastly different or wildly different, but I want to talk a little bit about these two, because I think they're important in cases like this, where what we're looking at here is this a rumination about a potential mistake, a false memory of something, or are we talking about a real event OCD case, right? So which one is it? So I'll talk a little bit about real event OCD. You kind of already mentioned that in that, but for folks who are new to this world, real event OCD is actually no. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let's get into it, and then we'll talk about true and false guilt. All right, let me move that down here because I can't stand to not have things out of order. All right, so real event OCD. So real event OCD is a subtype of OCD. I did a whole episode on this, and this is the first episode that I got some sassy comments on, so it lives in a warm place in my heart where someone tried to cancel me for my cancel culture real event OCD podcast. It was super fun. It felt good. It felt good now. For the time, I thought I was being canceled. So the first episode, you can go check out this episode. It was published on July 14th, 2020. I don't know what number that was, and this was before I was numbering them, so Go find it, enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it. But either way, it was called Real Event OCD, Cancel Culture, and Reassurance. I know I give just super punchy and sexy titles to these podcasts, so good luck to you. All right, so what Real Event OCD is it is an obsession and a focus on something that actually did happen. And the rumination tends to be, and the compulsions tend to be about something that could happen as a result of it, and preventing something that could happen, or eliminating that bad feeling about something that actually did happen. So the question isn't about whether or not something did happen. That's the basis of it. The obsession tends to be, well, because of this, then what? So a lot of times, and it differs then from traditional other obsessions, because those tend to be things that all could happen, might happen. What if I become contaminated? What if I harm someone in the future? What if I become gay? It's not that I am this now or know this to be true about myself or have any evidence for something. It's something could happen. I could discover something. I could become something. I could do something, etc. Real event is this thing happened, and then all these ruminations and stories and fears about what could happen as a result. So let's give some examples, right? So let's say, the obsessions might be, somebody had drunken sex in college, right? It might be, well, was that consensual sex or was that sexual assault, right? So the event actually happened. You remember that, but there was a little fogginess about how much consent there was or wasn't, right? And you can see all then the implications of what that means about that person, about their character, about what they should do about this, right? It can be, the one I've seen is kind of similar to when you're talking about. I've worked with this a couple of times. It's, well, I cheated on this test, so do I deserve my degree? Right? Maybe it's I lied on my resume. I added a little bit of something, I embellished something, I put something in there that maybe wasn't there, but to get the job. And I got the job. But rumination can jump in and say, well, I lied on that thing and I got this job. Maybe I should get fired from my job. Or this thing happened in high school and it was my first job, or it was the thing I put on my college application that then got me into college, that then got me my job, or got me into grad school, that got me my job afterwards, right? So did that one lie negate everything I just did, right? Maybe it's I stole something as a kid. Boy, I wonder if I'm going to go to hell for that, or I wonder if I'm going to go to jail for that, right? It could be I flirted with someone on a work trip that wasn't my spouse, right? Your spouse didn't go with you on this work trip. You flirted with someone. Maybe you kissed that person. Well, am I going to get found out for this? Was that cheating? Am I going to get a divorce, right? So the event happened, and then all these stories and what ifs and fears around the implications of it, that's where the obsession and the compulsive cycle moves on from. So as you kind of referenced in your message, there are a lot of compulsions that folks do around this, right? And again, it's to make sure that feared story of the outcome is never going to happen or isn't going to happen in the way that it says, or to get to the point where you can feel better about yourself. So that might be rumination, playing the story over and over and over again, trying to think about what to do, how to approach it, how to handle it, who to tell, what to say, and then we make a decision, and then we go back and we relitigate it again. We go through the whole story from the tippity top again. That's rumination. It could be mental review, playing these stories over and over and over again. Similar to that, scenario twisting, right? Well, if I did this different, if I said this different, how would it affect things? If I hadn't been here, if I hadn't done that, if I did this thing different, well, then what would happen, right? There can be crystal ball reading, right? Similar to, and these kind of fit together, right? If you do one, sometimes you're going to do another one, or they're going to go hand in hand. So maybe there's going to be playing scenarios about the future, right? What will happen? What will this person say? What could they say if I said this thing, if I confessed this way, if I said this bit of information to this person, to this entity, whatever? What will be the impact, and then what will be the subsequent impact of that? There can be some reassurance seeking for folks, Googling to see if there were similar examples of your story to see if it matches and to see what happened to that person and whether or not it was a favorable outcome or whether it was a disastrous outcome. People Google or people search on Reddit all the time for things like this as well. There can be, asking, hypothetical what if questions to friends. Hey, y'all, like, at a dinner party, oh man, I heard this story online about a person who happened to be cheating on this test in college. What do you think should happen to this person? Should they, should we forgive them and kind of let them go on with their lives? Or should we, bring the hammer down on them and fire them and destroy their life and career? Blah! And kind of see what they say and see if it's a favorable outcome. And hopefully they would say compassion and love and forgiveness. And some people are not going to share that. But either way, these are some ways that people do. Some other compulsions that I've seen are people having an extra good character. It doesn't mean that they're not already a nice person. It's that they like add this extra layer of intensity of goodness onto their character. Or some people who are just overly apologetic and trying to like make up for that thing in the past, and hopefully it corrects things. But all these things, ultimately, again, it's to try to undo it, right? So that's kind of real event in a nutshell. Now, it brings me to talking about that real event, or the true or false guilt. So the reality is we all make mistakes. We're all going to do things that are out of our character, that are not who we want to be. And they may be based on just, momentary lapses in judgment. They may be based on poor information. They may be based on, just being pulled in an emotionally weird direction. It could be a flip-flop of values, right? So it's not like you acted on, an evil impulse. It might be that you acted on one set of values when in retrospect, you wish you had acted on another set of values, right? I think a good example of that is whether or not, your wife asks you, or the classic example I always give is, your wife or my wife comes up to me and says, hey, do I look fat in this? The answer is always no, you look beautiful in that, right? Whether or not they look fat in that, right? Now it's a silly example, but the point is that I'm choosing to tell in this instance, and you get the idea, is to tell a mistruth. It's a lie. That's another word for lie. To tell a lie in a moment when that's not my value, but it's so that I don't hurt this person's feelings that I also care about. And I don't have values to hurt someone's feelings. I want people to feel good and confident about themselves, etc. But there's a flip-flop, right? So this is just kind of, we make mistakes because we're human, right? It's imperative on us in this process and in life to offer ourselves grace and self-compassion, right? And in fact, this is kind of recognizing that everybody is in the same boat. It's one of the pillars of self-compassion from Kristen Neff. It's this recognition that, it's the common humanity. We all do this. We are all in this same boat. Ain't no one out there who's perfect, or who has never lied, or who has never made a mistake, or who has never flip-flopped their values, or who has never had a regret in their life. We all are, and we all have to acknowledge that because we're human, and we would give that compassion to somebody else. We would heap love and understanding and grace on somebody else. But for ourselves, for some reason, we just beat ourselves to death because of it. So it's recognizing that we're in the same boat, and it's a good boat. But what do we do with that mistake? What do we do with it? There's got to be a way out of it. Now, true and false guilt is an important thing to think about. Guilt is that bad feeling that we have when we did something bad, when we did something outside of our values, right? Shame is that bad feeling that we get when we think that we are something bad, that just deep down we are bad and ruined and garbage, right? Shame, or that's shame. Guilt says, I did something bad. I did something mean. I hurt someone's feelings. But the difference between the two is incredibly important. Shame says, there's nothing changed in this. This is who you are. This is what you're about. This is your future. And for always, this is the only thing that can come from you is bad. Guilt says, I messed up. I screwed up in this moment. And I can identify what I did, what I said, how I acted, who I hurt. I can atone for it. I can make up for it. I can make it right. And in a similar situation, I can do something different. It promotes growth. It promotes change. And that's what we ultimately want. I want people who make mistakes to be able to take ownership of it, to make those changes, to recognize what they did, who they did it to, and to be able to do something to make it right, and to be able to do something again in the future so that they can have a chance at a good and positive and loving future. Because you know what? I want that for me too. I want somebody else to be able to look at my mistakes and my errors and not just throw me away, but instead to say, you made a mistake. What did you do? Who did you do it to? Why did you make that decision? How can we do that differently in a similar situation ongoing? And then to implement those things. That's what I think we ultimately want as a society. Don't look at Reddit. Reddit wants bad things for everybody. Anyways, but true and false guilt, and this is why I think that recognition of did you do it or did you not do it is important, right? Because let's say you did something bad. Well, then you should feel bad, right? That bad feeling is there for a reason. It's good. Guilt is that feeling that says, hey man, here's where you messed up. What can you do differently next time? And then let's do that thing next time. Let's do that thing better next time or differently. So we mess up. We acknowledge it. We own it. And then we think about, what do we have to do to make it right? Do we have to apologize? Do we have to confess to that person? Do we have to receive some type of punishment or consequence for our choices? Then we endure, we experience, we live out that consequence, and then that's when we let ourselves off the hook. We experience the consequence, and then we move on with life, and then make a choice to do things differently in the future. Subsequent feelings of guilt are false guilt. And false guilt we would also call it false guilt if there's this feeling of guilt, but you didn't do anything bad, right? So that's where it's important. False guilt keeps you in this loop because there's nothing that's going to let you off the hook. If you did something bad, you atoned for it, you apologized, you received consequences to it, etc., you're off the hook. The continued feelings are false guilt and is only going to keep you in the cycle, because then you keep apologizing, keep working, keep trying to change, keep self-flagellating, but it's never going to let you out. So that's the point where we're accepting the feeling and accepting the thought and letting go of that, of those behaviors to try to let ourselves off the hook, right? Okay. So what does it mean to make things right? All right. So again, part of this is coming from the perspective that if you did do something, all right? So if you did do something, well, what do we do to make it right? This is a sticky wicket for everybody, right? Because sometimes confessing and taking responsibility may be the right move. And sometimes it may cause more harm than good, right? Doing this step of trying to make it right, apologizing, confessing, receiving the consequences to your actions is going to be based on your values and is going to be based on the situation. It's a very murky mess of a situation. There sometimes isn't the right answer. And I'll say this, in these situations, oftentimes there isn't a right answer. Because if there was a right answer, you would have done it already. But instead, we're trying to pick the best worst option. We're trying to pick the one that still kind of sucks, but maybe better than the other ones, right? So I'll give you an example, because sometimes the actions that you take can cause more harm, right? And the question is, will it also let you off the hook then? So for example, let's go with the example of confessing to kissing someone or flirting with someone, right? Well, you could confess it. Your partner could be mad at you, kick you out of the house. You got to go do counseling, whatever it might be. You work at it, you apologize, you make a conscious effort that's never going to happen again. You create some structures around your life so that you can't find yourself in a similar situation as that. Great. But it still may not let you off the hook. It could make the relationship better and stronger and your marriage better, or it could start this cycle where you're just ruminating about what did I do, looking for any situation that could let you off the hook, or looking for scouring past events where you happened to glance at somebody, or you thought about somebody, or you had the feeling around somebody, or you talked to somebody and you smiled more than you should have. And it continues to send you back to this sense of guilt and shame, right? Or, you could confess and it could cause a divorce and blow up your life. I don't know. Let's go with the example of telling your school about your cheating. They could say, who cares? Happens. It was 30 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Who cares, right? But OCD could then shift to subsequent jobs, shift to other situations where you lied, etc. And again, keeping you in that cycle. In some of these situations where it's maybe advisable to not confess, to not actively seek out consequences. Instead, we can practice a living amends. A living amends is the idea of doing something intentionally in light of and in the spirit of and in the service of that mistake, right? So it might be, giving to a charitable donation. If it was someone that you hurt, it could be doing something kind for them, or doing something kind for somebody or for some group of people that they really cared about, or they really care about, so that it's you symbolically taking ownership of it. Now, again, this is a murky mess that you can process with a therapist, and how it looks and what to do and how much to do it, etc. But these are some ways to go about doing that. Now, you also asked about ERP. Okay, so number one, we got to look at the compulsions that you're doing, right? As you know, if you were to do anything between exposure and response prevention, do response prevention. That is resisting those compulsions, right? So you listed a bunch, right? Let's go back. What are you doing? Trying to find it. Here we go. Recounting events, checking old homework, calculating grades, checking old emails. Needed to do all those things. So first, resisting the urge to do those things. It will be hard because you're going to get a thought. It's going to create this sense of feeling, this guilt, this urgency. And you're going to feel like the right thing to do is to go back and check, or to ruminate, or to play the story back again, or do it just right so that you get back to a place of confidence and safety. But you've already done it. There's no more need to do it. I'm letting you off the hook of that. So instead, you're going to acknowledge that there's that urge, but then we don't do the compulsion, and then we notice, we make space for the feeling. We notice the thoughts. We notice that urge. We notice the mental images that are floating through, and we accept and welcome all those feelings as a result of your anxiety, as a result of your guilt or false guilt, or whatever it might be, right? But it's important to resist those compulsions. Second, you can also notice when you're compulsing. So even if you start giving into it and you start going down that path, you can catch yourself. You can say, I'm noticing I'm doing that again. I'm noticing I'm doing my compulsions. Yeah, call yourself out. And then we make a sharp left turn into doing something different, right? You can say, I'm falling into that trap again, right? And that might be all the language you need to notice it and to make that shift. You could say, there it is. That's all you need to say. You can even shrink that even smaller. And when you notice you're doing that process, you just say, thinking, dwelling, spinning. Yeah. If that's the code word you need to acknowledge what that process is and then make that sharp left turn, great. The other thing you can say is, I'm not solving that. That's unsolvable. Whatever code word you need to acknowledge it and then to shift out of it, great. But and then re-engage with something else that's more important. Now, that's not going to tamp down that feeling. It's going to come along with you, but eventually we know that that's going to drift away, right? You can also, in this process, notice all the things that trigger you, right? So make a list of all the things that bring on that thought, and then practice exposing yourself to those things. Right? Accepting then the presence of the feeling, resist that fixing, letting him pass by, the kind of clouds in the sky sort of mindset, or the waves of the ocean, or what is it, like goats on a mountain? I've heard that example before. Whatever helps you to just acknowledge that there's, your monkey mind is at play, and then acknowledge it, accept it, and keep going with your life, right? So when it comes to exposures, again, I think it depends on, and I would probably treat it differently. Again, if you were in my office, we'd be having a different conversation. But one, if you didn't do anything wrong, then I'd say this is then we're getting like artificial evidence from an unknown place or from a false memory, right? So we would say, you know what, maybe I did, maybe I didn't do it, and that's not saying I didn't do it. That's not confessing to something that you didn't do. We're letting it go and we're saying, I just don't freaking know. And I'm not going to know. And I'm not going to solve it. And that's going to be uncomfortable, right? But again, we're letting that feeling be there. You could also, again, I'm going to be a big script person, right? You can script and say, well, maybe I'm going to get caught. Maybe I'm going to get caught doing something that I didn't do, right? Or maybe I'm going to get accused of something without evidence, and it's going to destroy my life and ruin my career, and my spouse is going to leave me, and all my friends are going to call me a cheater, et cetera, et cetera. Play that story out, sit with that feeling. If you did do something sketchy, accept it, acknowledge it. Man, that was sketchy. If it was, right? Now, if it's the unknown about whether it was or it wasn't, it sounds like there's some rumination about it. We still go, you know what? It might have been sketchy. It might not have been sketchy. Other people were doing it. Other people weren't doing it. I don't know. And it doesn't matter. I'm going to let it go. Again, if you know you did something sketchy, own it, right? If you were doing something a little off kilter, a little funky, own it. I screwed up. I shouldn't have done it, right? We apologize to ourselves. But again, part of that question is, what do you need to do about it? Should anything be done about it? Or do we just simply sit with that feeling, right? Scripting is going to be an important thing with this as well. There are going to be movies or TV shows out there that have themes of cheating on tests, et cetera, or whatever the sketchy thing that you think or acknowledge or possibly maybe sort of kind of did. You get the idea. Another thing you can do, think about those things that trigger you. Places, items, people. Put the degree on the wall. Go to your college. Spend time with your friends from school. Notice that there is that feeling, that guilt that's there. Yeah, it's going to be there. But you're going to let yourself off the hook by continuing to move through that feeling and noticing the feeling and saying, yeah, this is part of it. And I feel guilty and I feel uncomfortable. But it's not something that I need to do anything about. Now, lastly, let yourself off the hook. One of the things you can do to let yourself off the hook is give yourself forgiveness. The definition of forgiveness, and I've not shared this in a while, the definition I love for forgiveness is no longer seeking punishment towards yourself or towards other people for harms done. When we have not forgiven somebody, we hold these anger feelings towards them. We try to poison them, hurt them through those bad feelings. Maybe we try to we try to talk trash about them. We try to prevent them from having good experiences. We try to ruin their day. If we don't forgive ourselves, we are also actively beating ourselves up and talking trash about ourselves. We use horrible language about ourselves, right? We maybe prevent ourselves from having good opportunities or feelings of joy and excitement. I want you to note all the things that you do that you're preventing yourself or trying to, again, bring punishment on yourself, and resist doing it. And in fact, I would say do the opposite of it. Do something kind for yourself. Do something loving for yourself. Do something that gives yourself opportunity for connection and friendship. If it's with your degree, go for like that dream job that your brain goes, you can't have because you cheated on your test, or whatever it might say. Or, I'll leave it at that example. I've talked for too long. So Marianne, I hope this was helpful, and I really appreciate you sharing this. And I hope there's somebody else out there who's experiencing this same struggle who needed to hear this as well, and needed to know that there's other people in the world who also go through these hardships and through these difficulties. I'm so glad to hear that things are going well, and I know that sometimes it still creeps back in, but we still practice these same things. And again, it may not be one of those things that fully leaves you, because it might be one of those things from your past that hits us and reminds us of the choices that we made, and we just go, I hate that. It might be that too. And then we shake it off and we keep on moving. So again, thank you so much for that question. And until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com, or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.